Is it Bama or South Carolina? And where does Auburn finish in the final regular season power rankings of the season? Come talk to me and Chris Phillips about it. We're about to get it started. What's up, War Report family? We are back with another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. Joining me, as he does every single Monday, to talk about his power rankings is my guy Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered. Chris, you're going to be home this weekend for the first time in forever.
But home game.
I think it was a successful SEC Unfiltered tour, man. Before we get started on these power rankings, tell me about last week's trip.
Yeah, Mike, first things first, man. Appreciate you having me on. It's always a pleasure, man. 14 straight weeks officially in the books. We closed it out in College Station, Texas at the Lone Star Showdown. Had a blast. Got to tour the facilities at A&M on Friday night, go on the field at Kyle Field. It was my first time, obviously, ever being there. It's one of the great spectacles of college football. You know, we talk about the 7 wonders of the world. I think the 8th wonder might be Kyle Field. I mean, it's just never seen a stadium like it. Again, the facilities are absolutely beautiful. You know, I'm going to sound like a broken record and echoing others when you say there's a reason people say, hey, A&M's got everything you need to be a big-time year-in, year-out contender. It's because they do, you know what I mean? And I think they got the right coach now as well. Just got to add the Jimmies and Joes. And game was awesome. Tailgating was great. The Aggies were awesome. But don't fret. Don't fret out there, Auburn folks, or other SEC brethren. I haven't joined the Colts. I didn't come back as a full-blooded Aggie. There were a lot of people that were worried about me. But, no, I had a great time, man. They were great. And College Station was awesome. And like I said, saw a great game as well, a dominant performance from Texas. And it was a great end to the SEC Unfiltered tour, man, 14 weeks strong.
Look, it was rivalry week. I was in Tuscaloosa for the Iron Bowl. Others were at lesser rivalries elsewhere. But look, there was both the joy and there was both tears handed out on Saturday. So before we get into this, I want to shout out this segment, which is brought to you by our friends at Joy Mode. Visit tryjoymode.com and use code REPORT to get 20% off plus free shipping. Look, if your team won on Saturday, maybe you wanted to celebrate. And Chris, I'm not here to judge how people choose to celebrate, but if you got with your lady and you celebrated that way, Joy Mode has you covered. Visit tryjoymode.com and use code REPORT again for 20% off plus free shipping. Imagine a supplement like your favorite greens pack that you put in 6 to 8 ounces of water, and then bam, Iron Bowl victory, QB1, head coaching gig. Whatever awesome football analogy you need, Try Joy Mode can help you make it happen. Again, visit them and use code REPORT to get 20% off plus free shipping. Chris, let's jump into this, man. You released your weekly power rankings as we always do. We'll take a look at what you had last week, and then we'll talk about where everybody fell this week, including Auburn here at the end. Week 14, Texas 1, Georgia 2, South Carolina 3, Tennessee at 4. Now, I got to say, all 4 of these teams won on Saturday. So not anticipating any changes there. Ole Miss regrettably won. Of course, they played the worst team in these power rankings. Florida won their rivalry week against Florida State. Alabama won their rivalry week in the Iron Bowl in Tuscaloosa, America's Junkyard. Texas A&M, sadly, for a lot of Aggies, they followed you to the SEC, and then they beat the crap out of you to get a spot in the SEC championship game in the first year. Ouch, that's got to hurt. LSU, Vanderbilt, Auburn, and Arkansas round out 9 through 12. And then at the bottom of the conference, even though they won on Saturday, you've got Missouri 13th.
Well, that's last week's. That's last week's power rankings.
Oh, yeah, this is last week's.
That's last week.
Last week.
Hey, listen, Mizzou fans already they got a bone to pick with me. Let's not make it worse.
Okay, all right. Look, they earned it, and they're terrible. Oklahoma, Kentucky, and Mississippi State round that out. Let's jump to this week. Texas, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, unmoved. You were unmoved by what happened in those 4 rivalry games. South Carolina, I would say South Carolina maybe had the biggest win out of these 4. Against Clemson. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Top 15 team on the road. the impact of winning that Palmetto Bowl. I think absolutely South Carolina was probably the biggest winner of rivalry weekend outside of Texas, obviously going into Kyle Field, punching their ticket to the SEC title.
Look, Georgia in the craziest game we've seen in quite some time. What was it? 8 overtime, 7 overtime. It's crazy. Tennessee won. Ole Miss, they were ranked 5 last week. You dropped them to 7 after beating State. But because primarily Bama jumped up after winning the Iron Bowl.
And also the way Ole Miss looked, Mike. Very uninspiring performance against, to your point, arguably the worst team in the league. Also, Florida beat Ole Miss. So last week or 2 weeks ago, we had them at 2. Didn't feel comfortable dropping them all the way down to 7, but with Bama's win, Ole Miss's struggles, and Florida's win, felt like the right place to move Ole Miss after a sluggish finish to the season.
Now, you jumped Bama ahead of Florida. Florida didn't move. They stayed at 6. Again,
they did beat a 2-10 Florida State team. So, yeah, I think Florida State would be 17th in these power rankings if we added them to the SEC.
LSU jumped up from 9 to 8. Texas A&M dropped from 8 to 9. And then you've got Missouri at 10, Vanderbilt at 11, Auburn at 12. So they only dropped the one spot. The one spot this week, which I would agree with. I think that this is about where they're at. A lot of tough losses this year. And then rounding out the bottom, Arkansas, Oklahoma State, and Kentucky. But I think that, and I think these are dead on. Now we've had our differences.
Did I finally get it right, Mike? Did I finally get them right?
Oh, yeah.
It only took 15 weeks, and I finally nailed it.
Look, it works itself out. It works itself out. But I think the question, Chris, is going to be about South Carolina or Alabama. Now, again, just taking a look at these power rankings, I think we can agree Texas and Georgia are in. SEC champion and SEC runner-up are going to be in.
Tennessee is in.
Yep. But South Carolina and Bama have the interesting situation of their head-to-head versus how they finished the season. 6 straight wins to finish the season for South Carolina. But they lost in Tuscaloosa, albeit by only 2 points, Chris. Look, man, flat out, who deserves to be in?
Mike, to your point as well, Ole Miss fans and Lane Kiffin himself have, made their case that they deserve to be the one of the 3 teams. Because I only think one of the 3 is getting in. Ole Miss is claiming, listen, they beat the crap out of South Carolina at Williams-Brice Stadium. They are pulling up margins of victory and strengths of schedule and winning margins. And Lane Kiffin's taking the timeline, telling literal South Carolina fans on social media, y'all want a rematch? Spot the ball is what he posted back at someone. So Ole Miss is making their claim. I'll tell you this, Mike. Of those 3, this is where we run into trouble, right? Because are we trying to get the 12 best teams in? Are we getting the most deserving in? Are we going more off strength of schedule, resume? If it was my playoff, Mike, and I had to pick one of the 3, I think the most deserving is South Carolina.
Yeah.
Here's why it's hard for me to feel, and actually it's not hard for me at all. I don't feel bad for Bama or Ole Miss because their destiny was in their control and they got to the finish line and tripped. They tripped over themselves. All Bama has to do is beat Oklahoma. All Ole Miss had to do was beat Florida. Like, you controlled your own destiny and you stubbed your toe down the way. Now, Mike, what do I think the committee is going to do?
Okay.
Alabama's getting in that playoff. You know it. I know it. You watching, you know it. We all know it because there's just no way on this planet they're going to look at – because I think Ole Miss is out. I don't care what argument Ole Miss fans have. Enjoy the Outback Bowl and get over it. You're out. You messed up. Yeah, I think it's between Bama and South Carolina. There's no way on God's green earth, Mike, they're putting a South Carolina team in over a Bama team that beat them head-to-head. There's just no way they're doing that. I think that script A still matters as much as people hate to hear it. And I think while South Carolina's win streak to end the year has been nice, they're going to put Bama in. But, again, if we're talking purely just deserved, I think South Carolina most deserving. I think Bama is going to get in. And I understand the argument, though, because, again, they won head-to-head. But It all comes down to what do you weigh more, Mike. And, hey, listen, depending on what happens Saturday, I could argue both of them should be in.
I'll tell you.
In the playoff, I mean.
I'll tell you this, Chris. They have to be very careful about what precedents they set in this very first playoff. Now, last year, they left an undefeated FSU team out. A undefeated P5 champion got left out of the playoffs because although they won every game, they weren't as good based on the eye test as they were
and
earlier
because
in
Jordan
the year.
Travis's injury, that
Correct. Well, that's why they weren't as good,
Right,
right?
right,
Without him, they
right.
weren't as good.
Right.
And then for this playoff, if you're going to set the precedent that head-to-head matters, you're going to get absolutely fried by the general public if, for some reason, you backwards logic some other team that lost the head-to-head, and you put them in the playoff based on the eye test. So if you're going to do it, if you're going to say, look, how you're playing now matters, do it now. Do it in this first one. Because I think that you can always go back and say head-to-head matters depending on what the scenario is, but it's very hard later to make a subjective argument for why someone lost the head-to-head and it gets in over another team because they, and here's my argument against why I think Bama makes it. I think that this is Kalen DeBoer's Bama and Nick Saban's Bama are two different Alabamas, right? Saban's Bama doesn't get goose-egged in terms of touchdowns versus anybody, right? 3 points in a game. The last time that they didn't score a touchdown was 2011 in the infamous 9-6 LSU game. They still ended up winning the national title that year, but that was Nick Saban's Alabama. This Alabama, I'm not so sure they're going to get that respect. I think everybody saw an Iron Bowl on Saturday that Auburn blew more than Alabama won.
They don't have quite the cachet that the Nick Saban Bama. I'm sure there's no bias in that opinion from you, Mike. I will say this, though. You mentioned, like, tomorrow night these rankings are going to come out. I think what's interesting, Mike, like, can we not agree that, I mean, chaos in front could certainly open some things up. But, I mean, for the most part, whatever order they're in tomorrow night, that's what order they're going to be in. Right? I mean, they because they don't play this weekend. They can't do anything. So if let's just hypothetically say the order is Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, how can South Carolina jump Alabama going into the final round?
Because they don't play.
Unless the only thing that could happen is they put them both in.
So it will be decided tomorrow night.
I mean, how could it not be? I mean, how could it not be? And here's what's crazy too. In the college football playoff rankings last week, Mike, South Carolina was behind Alabama and Ole Miss.
Yeah.
So and Ole Miss fell behind South Carolina in the AP. Here's the thing. AP means nothing for the college football playoff rankings. Why would Ole Miss drop below South Carolina after a win? Granted, South Carolina's win was much higher quality. They beat a top 15 team. It's going to be fascinating because, like, again, to your point, depending on how it's slotted tomorrow, it's like that's kind of what it is. I don't. If you don't play another game, I mean, imagine that precedent. Why'd you move them? Well, we just did. They didn't play, but we just changed our minds. I mean, so it. Nobody knows what's going on.
I agree with you. Like I said, I think that at the end of the day, you have the uncomfortable job of trying to tell South Carolina possibly that even though you might be the hottest team in America right now, you lost by 2 points on the road. And so, does the committee think that South Carolina is the same South Carolina that they were, or
you got to go tell Alabama that, this team you beat head to head is going to get in ahead of you anyways.
Right. Right.
I mean, again, maybe Ole Miss has a gripe too, because, I mean, listen, Alabama struggled to beat Georgia. Listen, Alabama struggled to beat Georgia. Ole Miss beat the crap out of Georgia. Alabama struggled to beat South Carolina. Ole Miss went into Columbia and beat the crap out of them. So, I mean, Alabama lost to Vandy in Oklahoma. Ole Miss lost to, Florida and Kentucky. I mean, I don't know. They're both flawed in that way. Like, I mean, I see why Lane Kiffin's lobbying the way he is. I think it's really comical to see all these coaches, by the way, on Twitter, like voicing their claim. Like, but I get it, but see, back to the point that Mike, I don't have any sympathy. South Carolina, I actually have some sympathy. What if Lenora Sellers doesn't get hurt in the entire second half of the LSU game?
Fair enough.
Right? Like, if he plays, they win. I think that's fair to say. Again, Ole Miss and Bama, you controlled your destiny and you messed it up. So see, Mike, that's where the deserving comes in. South Carolina deserves it because they won 6 in a row. They improved as a football team, and they took care of their business down the stretch. Yeah. Ole Miss and Alabama are not as deserving because they limped their way to the finish line, and we're still going to reward them. But then you go back to the head-to-head. So it's a mess. I mean, it's truly a mess either way.
I have to apologize to our viewers. I downloaded the wrong power rankings. Here are the correct ones for this week. And so I'm proud of everybody that Lane Kiffin's Rebels, they're frauds. They're frauds, Chris.
Mike, do you not? I told you, Mizzou fans, they are they don't like me right now.
They
because you know why? You know why? Because a few weeks ago, listen, I'm a guy. Sometimes I like to take a swing and like pick an upset, and it's worked out a lot this year. It's blown up sometimes. I picked Mississippi State to beat Missouri.
Okay.
Big swing and miss. Then they didn't like where I had them in the power rankings. They felt like I was being disrespectful. They were too low. I mean, I've got Mizzou fans coming at me on social media. Love Mizzou. They think it's personal. They think I'm biased. Like, it's not. Then I picked Arkansas to beat them. They're like, this guy hates us. What did we do to this guy? And I was like, I promise if Mizzou wins, we'll go on our Sunday Live. I'll give all the credit. I'll issue an apology for doubting MIZ. I did exactly that. They moved up the power rankings. Now you're going to throw the fraud on the graphic. I can't win with these people.
Yeah, hey,
they're going to hate me into oblivion. I'm trying to go visit Como next year. I don't know that I'll be welcome.
Yeah, I'm posting.
They may not let me off the plane.
Yeah, I'm definitely posting the fraud graphic to Twitter.
They may not let me off the plane in St. Louis. Like,
look, before we get into talking Auburn here, they had a disappointing end to their season. Definitely want to mention to our viewers this episode of the War Report is brought to you by friends at Manscaped. Visit manscaped.com and use code report to get 20% off plus free shipping. Joining the 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with their personal grooming care. We're sophisticated men, Chris, in a sophisticated world, and we don't use the same trimmer to trim our balls that we do our face. I mean, you got a nice looking beard there. Manscaped has you covered with the beard hedger. They also have the electric foil shaver, and they've got a number of products that will help you show your lady a good time right after you take some joy mode. Visit manscaped.com and use code report for 20% off plus free shipping. We're coming back here. Look, you had Auburn at 12 in your rankings. Now they're behind a couple of the frauds. But, we'll deal with that later. Fraud, Missouri, Auburn pretty much handed that game back to them. Again, I've dealt with Ole Miss fans. They just missing this playoff is inexcusable for Ole Miss. With the first six, they should have been 6-0 to start this season. And they failed that test by losing to Kentucky. 3 losses on this schedule is unforgivable for Lane Kiffin. Like, I'm sorry. I don't think he'll ever get it done. If you can't make this playoff, dude, they gave you 8 extra chances to make the playoff and you missed it. Wait. 14, like there were a 12-team playoff last year, they make it unquestioned. But if you're Auburn, you had a very unceremonious end to your season. It was the story of good but not enough. Now, I want to celebrate this defense. Boy, they were top 25 good. Chris, they played more freshmen on defense than anybody in the country in the Power Four this year. And they turned Bama over 4 times in Tuscaloosa. Time after time, they gave the ball back to this offense just for them to squander it. I'm sorry. It's time to have the conversation about Tanner Burns, the special teams coach, being out of here. Special teams has been atrocious. I know you lost Alex McPherson, but week after week, Auburn kickers missed routine kicks that would have changed the course of the game. Play calling, I felt like left a lot to desire. Look, man, I know where you were, but your thoughts on this Auburn season. 5-7. They did one game worse than they did last year. They're not likely to be invited to a bowl. It's still possible at 5-7. But it's kind of like my prom date fell through and you're my backup kind of thing, man. This was a disappointing season for Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers.
Yeah, Mike, it's like your first few prom dates fell through and you're on your fourth or fifth option at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't know if there's an adjective that really fits how disappointing this Auburn season was. I felt like I came into the season with pretty conservative expectations at even 7-5. I mean,
that's where I thought the ceiling was at.
Well, I mean, and a lot of that was tied to I wasn't a believer in Peyton Thorne, and to your point, the defense, DJ Durkin, what he did, they have to be celebrated. I think if you're clinging to why the future is bright on the Plains, a lot of it's got to do with the defense, but they got to figure out offensively what the heck's going on, man. And I think a lot of it starts with a lot of self-reflection with Hugh Freeze. Listen, next year we're going to find out if you're the guy or not. That's it to me.
The seat's hot next year, is it not?
I believe it is. I think he's on the hottest seat in the SEC going into next year, if you want my opinion. I would say so. I mean, because
hold on, wait. That hold on. Let's pause there.
I think he's on the hottest seat in the conference going into next year.
Of all these teams, nobody's hotter than Hugh Freeze.
Well, I think, because of the win that Brent Venables got, and I know Auburn got the big win over A&M. Take nothing away. I look at Oklahoma. You bring in a new offensive coordinator. I think maybe that alleviates some pressure from Brent Venables. He's also an Oklahoma guy. He's like one of the Oklahoma sons, if you will. Like I think they're going to give him a little bit more leeway. Also, just came into the SEC, so seat's warm. It's very warm in Norman. I don't think it's as hot as Hugh Freeze's is. Sam Pittman's seat will be hot. He's back. We found that out today. But what are the expectations at Arkansas, Mike? I mean, if they go 6-6 or 7-5, he'll have the option to come back. It's not like let's call it for what it is, right? There's not crazy expectations in Fayetteville. There are expectations at Auburn. I mean, make no mistake, right?
Yeah.
And if you're hovering around 6-6 again, Mike, he's gone. He's gone, and he should be gone. He should be gone. Because as much as I put on Peyton Thorne this year, it was time and time and time again I came on here talking to you about coaching malpractice. At some point, as badly as you don't want to admit it, I talked to numerous Auburn personalities and fans and believe in the recruiting, believe in the type of people being brought on campus, believe in the portal. But at some point, if it's next year and he's shown you who he is and it's the same thing and we're having the same conversations, it's hard to admit you're wrong, but you're going to have to do it. It's like, you know what? We gave it our best effort. We thought this guy was the answer. We believed in him, but we got to fold him and we got to move on. And that's I think next year is going to tell us about Hugh Freeze. Because at some point, man, you just have to look at and accept the fact it was a failure.
I think that recruiting, everybody's hung their hat on recruiting.
Well, that's what gives you hope, right? As a fan, that's what gives you hope, right?
Are they one really good quarterback away from a 9-10 win season in the playoff? Next year, you have to go find that guy that puts you in that conversation so Auburn fans and boosters and donors can see that you are.
And it may look completely different, Mike, because you know better than I do. From what I know, from what you've told me and others, they're going to go spend money in the portal. I mean, they're going to go get a quarterback. They're going to go get whatever else they need. So maybe that's all it takes is the right signal caller. But
we found out yesterday that Holden Garner, the third-string quarterback, is hitting the portal. There were reports that second-string quarterback Hank Brown was hitting the portal. I spoke with Hank. He said, that's not true. Please tell everybody, Mike, that's not true. So, tweeted it out. Look, I spoke with Hank. He said that any reports that he's hitting the portal are premature. Doesn't mean that he might not decide to hit the portal, but, On3 was boldly reporting that he was going to enter the portal. And then they kind of sideways backtracked into saying like, oh, well, it's not open till the 9th, so he could still jump in. But we know Hank, and I'm telling you, nobody has a closer relationship with Hank Brown than Zach Blackerby. And if he's not reporting it, I'm not buying it personally. But let's say Hank decides to leave. In a week, the only quarterback left on scholarship in your quarterback room could be Walker White. With Deuce Knight coming in and potentially a portal QB. So you have to go out and get a guy in the portal.
Yeah, you can't in essentially a prove it for your job year, as talented as I think Deuce Knight is, because he is. You can't hitch your wagon to a true freshman, man. It's not fair to the kid. It's, you know what I mean? It's definitely not. That's what should matter. It's not fair to the kid.
I understand he's a project as well, too. Like, very talented, but, most freshmen are very few freshmen that could come in and play from week one, especially in this conference that eats up and spits out freshman QBs. Yeah. So, look, you've got to find a 1-year stopgap, which is what a lot of people felt like they should have done last year, Chris. Go out, find a 1-year stopgap, and then move on. But a commitment was made to Peyton Thorne. And for what it's worth, Peyton Thorne, had he not sat out the New Mexico game and half of the Arkansas game, he would have been only Auburn's third single-season 3,000-yard passer in the whole history of the program. He finished third in the conference in passing efficiency. He had the only quarterback in the conference that had more completions of 40-plus yards or more was Jackson Dart. He's the only QBs in Auburn history to finish with better passer rating than Peyton Thorne were Jason Campbell and Cam Newton. Play calling and system were bigger problems in my mind than Peyton Thorne this year. And they've got to figure that out. Like, there were some spurious calls on Saturday, and Hugh said, "Why call this play?" And that he took responsibility for some of the trick play in the fourth quarter, Chris, that every Auburn fan, why now? Why ask Jarquez to throw a 45-yard bomb across his body on the run to the corner of the end? Just to me, horrendous call. There are people who disagree. But he did take some responsibility, and he said that, hey, play calling is a collaborative thing between him, Derek Nix, and Ken Austin. I think that has to stop as well, too. Dude, either call the plays or don't. But next year, you cannot get in front of the media and say, we all call the play. That, to me, is crazy. I would love to know if there are examples of that working elsewhere in college football. But, man, what a bad ending, I think, to this season. Look, if Auburn makes a bowl game for some reason, you and I are going to have another discussion on next week's Power Rankings about, again, what that'll mean. Those extra practices mean something to these kids, and getting to make that trip, I think, means something. Extending your season for one more month to play football, I think, means something, and we'll see if that happens. But look, Chris, man, I want to thank you for joining me before we get out of here. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, Mike, it's always a pleasure, man. And going to be interesting to see if that fourth or fifth date to the prom says yes for Auburn and they get into a bowl game. But, yeah, we're at SEC Unfiltered, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you find the War Report. You can find us there, YouTube and podcast as well, and, of course, our website, secunfiltered.com. And you will not find me on the road this weekend because the SEC Unfiltered Tour has concluded after 14 strong weeks. I will be posted up on my couch, Mike, cutting up content, maybe enjoying a burger, a soda, another beverage or two. And we'll be going live after the game, though, reacting to everything. And going to be a good time. So,
guys, that's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express podcast, powered by the War Report. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. Do us a favor, hit that like button and drop a War Damn Eagle in the comments for us. That helps us in the algorithm. We'll be back at you tomorrow. More Auburn Express. We're signing off. And as always, War Eagle.